All right, Lauren, thank you so much for joining us today with the Good Times Alc-Free podcast. I'm super pumped to have you. You know, it's one of those funny things where in this world, it's so funny how I'll get to use a product and not know the people behind it. And then as time goes along, you get to meet the people, you get to hear more about the story. I'm really pumped to have you on the show. And I'm really excited to hear more about Spiritless. To get started, I'd love just to hear what has your journey been to start Spiritless? It's an amazing product, but I just can't wait to hear more about it.
Oh, listen, thank you, Charlie. I am thrilled to be here and I never tire of telling the Spiritless story. So this is great. So Spiritless was founded in October of 2019. We just had our 4-year-old birthday, which
Yes.
it feels like it could have been 40 or, 4 months. And it really depends on the day. But,
Right.
it was founded by myself and two other women. And the three of us actually, before Spiritless, owned an experiential agency that worked with mostly big beverage alcohol companies.
Hmm.
And so we were doing large consumer facing activations, and we were frankly driving liquid to lips for thousands and thousands of people on the weekends. And what was interesting and what we started really hearing as a theme in late 2018 was, hey, could we get something non-alcoholic that's cool? And it was usually at the last minute. It was usually by a brand manager that was scrambling to solve this problem. And they were saying, can you call a cool mixologist and have him make us a tincture for 1,000 people tomorrow? And you're going like, no, Folio, it doesn't work that way. Sorry. And that kind of that drum beat really just started to become very consistent. And all the while, the three of us were busy working moms in the entertainment industry, which is just like laden with just complexity, right, on its own. In
Yeah.
you add a little bit of alcohol to that too, and you're going like, oh my God, I'm so tired, and I have to do things with these kids that I love, but I feel like I can't because I gotta go do this business dinner and this thing. And we were too reaching a little bit of a boiling point where we were going, God, wouldn't it be great to have a solution for this? And I'll never forget sitting in our conference room and going, let's go solve that problem. And we
Hmm.
all each other and we said, yeah, let's go do that. And that's really how it started. It's been 4 years since we said, ready, set, go.
Wow, that's incredible. That's such an interesting thing that I believe your background really must have set you up for a lot of the challenges that come from starting a brand, especially a beverage brand. To have that background must have been really helpful. As a question behind that, what do you think from your background from doing that really prepared you for starting this business?
So I think that we intimately understood storytelling for
Mm.
brands, and we understood the levers that brands needed from a communication perspective to be able to turn cards over and to be able to approach the consumer.
Hmm.
And for us, there was a couple of things after our experience that really stood out, which first and foremost, it was that consumers are buying spirits, generally speaking, because of some sort of production or process, right? Aged for how long, right? What kind of mash bill? Like that was how they were assigning value to these
Hmm.
products. And when we looked at the category broadly, we just saw a bunch of water and flavor at that point in time, right?
Yeah.
And while certainly there were products and are products that are scratching the itch, right? They are, wonderfully acceptable substitutes for beverage alcohol. We said, gosh, if this category is gonna really happen and grow, we need process to be able to tell a story, to hold value on these products, to be able to inform a consumer purchase decision. And we had been working hand in hand with some of the biggest brands in the world, whether that was mass marketers, these super prestigious bourbon brands, and they were all telling that story. And so we knew we had to find a way to weave in a story there, and we knew we had to make great liquid. And those were probably the two starting points that felt like important building blocks that still today, when we think about Spiritless, why we're here, what are we informing the consumer about, and what are our priorities, it's certainly process and it's certainly taste and flavor.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think that's one thing for me that really stands out about your products is as soon as you open up that bottle, there's just a difference in aroma and flavor. And it really does have those essences of tequila specifically for me. Your guys' tequila alternative is just like as soon as you pop, it's whoa, this is,
Yeah.
yeah, it's legit. And that's the interesting thing about this space that I think is such a remarkable opportunity, is that there's so many different ways that you can recreate that. But as you were saying, so many people were not cutting corners, but just really not putting the love and care that I've seen Spiritless do, where it's like, okay, let's not make this a flavored water. Let's take this seriously and let's really represent this category correctly and make something that can really stand up and showcase what non-alcoholic can bring. And that was such a fun thing. The best part is that Spiritless was one of our sponsors for BottleRock. And that was such a fun opportunity because here you had these festival goers. They really didn't even know that this was going to be an option for them. But then all of a sudden, we have the drink in a Paloma. And all of a sudden, they're saying, wait, are you sure this is non-alcoholic? This really smells and tastes like tequila. I am sober. I cannot be drinking alcohol. Or the vice versa, which was my absolute favorite, was, wait, this doesn't have alcohol in it? These people who were fooled just been spending the whole day out getting stuff, and all of a sudden they got a Paloma from us and didn't even really realize that it had no alcohol. And it was just this funny moment of, this is it. This is the moment that we're finally gotten to the point that I think is really, and it's critical for the industry. It's critical for where we're headed in the future, of this ability to recreate what we've come to know, but at the same time, also change it in a fun way so that it's not just a complete one for one replacement. It's a little bit of a difference, right? And I really enjoy that about your product. Like, I had this conversation with someone on Cinco de Mayo when we were using your product, and it was like, we know this doesn't have alcohol, but I'm feeling like some type of like really nice date, like just felt really calm from it. And I was really just, it was like one of those perplexing moments of, wait, this doesn't have alcohol, but I'm feeling really good from it. So I don't know if that's just a little anecdote of an experience, but I just really enjoyed that kind of outcome from your product.
Thank you. Listen, it is never lost on me that and still occasionally I'll walk into an account and I don't realize we're there or we're new on a menu and I find it and it's, oh my God, I cannot wait to have this drink. And it is such a delight.
Yes.
And I know that we are still meant to be doing this because I still get excited about that. And so
Nice.
thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that and including us. And listen, these products they're a tool in your toolkit for however you need to use them.
Yeah.
And it speaks to the power of the human brain, just in that kind of Pavlovian response that you're talking about here, which is
Yeah.
like, oh, it really feels like a drink. And you know what? Like I'm chilled out. I promise you there's nothing in Spiritless that is aiding in that. But the fact that it was enjoyable enough that your brain went there, I think is just absolutely terrific. And we've been really fortunate to make great liquids, but it's still, as you mentioned, it's a polarizing category, right? Like
Mhm.
there are,
Right.
you know, and I think what's interesting, and as we're seeing the evolution of the category in general, the data that we have is that the majority of our consumers actually buy alc and non-alc. It's a moment in time. They're maybe not drinking during the week or et cetera, et cetera. And so what you have there is consumers that are certainly very present to the original, right? Or the
Mhm.
full proof beverage alcohol version. And how are we educating on that gap, right? Where this is
Right.
different by design and being held to a standard that's similar, but not the same. Those are all pieces. It's a really fascinating, at some point in 10 years, Harvard Business is going to do a great case study on how we tied up
Yeah.
the customer's brain this way and made it all work.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think it's something that I love talking about with people in this space is we all have these different experiences and we've all had these different conversations with a whole different group of demographics from wherever you are and wherever it's being consumed. I know for you guys, it's really interesting. For me, I see you as a brand that has done a really good job of getting liquid to lips and being part of those larger activations like Coachella, like BottleRock. I wonder, what challenges are you guys seeing? I'd love to talk about it a little bit more. It seems like there's this interesting moment of there's a lot of interest. There's going to be a lot of people who want to come into this space. I had a really interesting conversation with Chris Marshall of Sands Bar about this a week ago. And it was really interesting because his perspective was, this is like a gold rush. And people have finally found out that there's gold in this category. Then you have all of these categories that are parallel to us, the cannabis space, the non-alcoholic space, and all of them are interested in getting a beverage into here. And one thing that I think is really unique about what you said of your background is you've worked with spirit brands. You've worked with these kind of brands that let you understand what's important, at least to people who are consuming alcohol. What do you think are some of the things that you have found are important to people who are in this non-alcoholic space?
Such a good question. And I think first and foremost, and there are times that I want it not to be this, but it's taste, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it just is. And I'm proud of the products that we make. They taste great. They're meant for a mixed drink. I'm sure you've had many people have this conversation with you. But at the end of the day, that is the number one driver and the number one experience. And so,
Yeah.
the challenge for non-alc spirits in particular is how do you drive trial and how do you make sure they're trying it in the way that you want them to?
Yeah.
Because what they all want to do, they go, oh, this is non-alcoholic, and they put that bottle to their lips, and you're going, cocktail. Like, what are you doing? Like, hold on, back. And so
Right.
I think that's the challenge that any spirits brand is dealing with. And that by comparison, when you start even looking at the wine and the beer categories, carbonation really helps a lot of things from
Hmm.
connecting the neurons in the brain and going, oh, this is familiar. This is like
Right.
that, which I think you've seen some sparkling non-alc wines do very well. And then
Yeah.
in addition to that, obviously we know all the great data for the non-alc beer category. That's really been incredible. But
Hmm.
there's more than one step. I want you to
Yeah.
buy it and I want you to make a really good cocktail out of it.
Right.
And that's the challenge, right?
Hmm.
It's making sure that the consumer doesn't screw it up for themselves because we have something good for them. The other complexity is or that we've really tried to solve is let's take some of the guesswork out of that. So Spiritless brought to market last year some non-alc just pour over cocktails in a can. So we have an old fashioned, a margarita, and then we have a whiskey sour. And that was one of the things that we knew. I needed to take the guesswork out of some of this and I needed to prove it to you that I was going to be able to make you a non-alcoholic adult drink that you went, holy moly, this feels like a cocktail.
Right.
Cool.
Right.
And although that certainly was anytime you add a layer of complexity to a business, a new production format, new
Hmm.
packaging, etc., it's like wagging the dog's tail a little bit
Right.
on all the things, capital needs, heartburn, you name it. But those have been really helpful and really supported the instinct that I had, which was we've got to take some of the guesswork out of this and prove it to them. Prove to
Hmm.
them this liquid makes a great drink.
Yeah, I think the RTDs is a really interesting way to do that. I think it's one of those things that I think you guys landed on three great products that are really speak to what people traditionally are looking to make out of these spirits. It's also just so interesting to me. This is where I always have a little bit of a challenge just from 20 years of being a bartender. I think for me at least, and what I really hope I can do more of a case study and really help people understand more is let's show them what they can make with it and not make them do this guesswork of will this work as an alternative to this. You know what I mean? It's just I feel like I hope that I can help in that way of making people understand that this is more versatile than you think and to make them understand that this isn't just mocktails for the first part are not just juices mixed together. It really does need to have these non-alcoholic spirits, but also how can we make it even more of a fun experience for you? And I think the RTDs are wonderful for exactly what you said. They really can hit that ability for that person who just wants to come home, crack open a can, pour it and drink it. Perfect. You've given them that opportunity. But I think for me at least, it's so funny. I had this conversation with a friend of mine like really at the end of the day, at least for me, I feel as if it's really going to take the restaurant industry and the bar industry really understanding and owning this as an opportunity and really seeing this as a new revenue stream that they have never hit before and that is larger than they could ever imagine. Because that is what it is. And if you can make it that you all of a sudden you have a wonderful cocktail program and you have all these amazing tequila drinks, why don't you have a non-alcoholic tequila drink on your menu? Why are you not allowing that person who will not drink anything else on your menu besides a sparkling water or a soda? This is the way that you get you get a whole new sector of people that you really haven't been able to speak to or sell to in the past. And I think that's how it grows for me, at least, because I understand that the complexities of making a cocktail can be really difficult and really hard for someone to take that step. Not many people do that at home. But I think it really is that next step. And that's where I find I'd love to talk to you further about this, because you've been in that space before of doing these entertainment events and things of that nature. I'd love to hear, where do you see that kind of going in the future for Spiritless and just as a category? I think it's so interesting because there there are only a handful of events that are happening throughout the nation on a monthly basis in this space. And no offense to the people who are doing this, because I'm one of them myself, but I've also just seen it around the nation. It's like, how do you get these larger beverage brands to look at this category and say, okay, let's invest in this and put on events where this is the focus, or that we make sure it's represented correctly?
So I think you hit the nail on the head. We agree that the on-premise is critical. I think one of
Yeah.
the really challenging things in the on-premise broadly, and it's saved for the big boys in a lot of
Yeah.
ways, because on-premise can be very expensive. And still at the end
Right.
of the day, it's much harder to sell one drink at the bar than it is a whole bottle in retail. You got to hit it 10 times, right, to get the same amount of revenue out of that bottle. And what I am excited about is that we are now seeing the on-premise go, okay, we got to find these solutions, which is great. And we're in a place where, because for Spiritless specifically, like we've garnered a much deserved reputation. People are finding us. We're certainly trying to network, but we're not at this point having to spend insane sums, right? Like other prominent bourbon brands might, to be able to get onto that bar. There's a whole lot of
Hmm.
agita in bringing that bottle to that account that would blow anybody's mind, that we don't have time for on this podcast. Anyways,
Right.
but we actually, this is a perfect example. Last week I was on the phone with a big entertainment company. They own some of the largest venues in the country, a lot of music. And in some venues, they're seeing revenues down 10% because they don't have non-alc. Like
Yep.
they're seeing it. And what's wonderful is that the consumer is now pushing its weight around. And at the end of the day, like, money talks and bullshit walks, as they say. And
Yeah.
they're going, okay, we've got to figure this out. And being there and being able to be, I think for brands, it's really critical that certainly we're talking about our products and sharing the details, but also you need to be somewhat of a consigliere on the category in general, because a lot of these buyers, especially in the big corporate accounts that you need to make ends meet, to be
Yeah.
blunt, right? They're going like, I'm old school. I drink for
Mhm.
effect, and I know I need this, but I don't get it. And so you're starting at
Yeah.
Adam and Eve, right? For a
Yeah.
little bit every time. And that's going to become less and less, but it's happening. We just launched, actually we are launching literally, I think on Halloween in TGI Fridays across the US with Jalisco, with our tequila, and it's on the menu. It's awesome.
That's
And like,
awesome.
I haven't had fried potato skins in so long, but I freaking cannot wait. Next time we talk, Charlie, you'll be like, Lauren, you're 20 pounds heavier. And I'll be like, no regrets. I had all the
No
potato skins,
regrets.
the
Potato skins all
non-alcoholic.
day.
Yeah, but it's happening is what I'm going to say. But we needed that. We needed the consumer to start pushing their weight around, and we needed
Hmm.
that larger data set to start to come in, which we're seeing now, right? I just saw stats today. Beverage alcohol is declining. It is a
Yeah.
major macro trend. And as much as these guys want to stick their head in the sand and go, oh no, but it was a COVID boom and now we're coming off of that. I'm like, no, but pull out more. We're not looking at a 2-year, we're looking at a 10-year, and it
Right.
is going down. And we're going to have more and more opportunities, which just only excites the heck out of me. And I love what you mentioned about great tequila bar, they need to have a tequila-based non-alc cocktail or a non-alc tequila-based cocktail. And we encourage people all the time to say, put an asterisk at the bottom of that menu and say, any of these drinks can be made non-alcoholic. There are enough
Bingo.
products here for
Yeah.
this. We can
Yes.
solve for that. And yes,
Right.
maybe it won't quite have the bite or the burn, but dang, we can get so close. So close.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's one of the most exciting things is when we get with an awesome bartender and I'm just saying, hey, I want this, but with this. And
Yeah.
they know what their drink tastes like. And we start sliding it in and they're leaning over the bar and patting their brow and they're going, holy girl, what is this stuff? It's just such a delight. So
It's such a delight when you have that moment and you have that like kind of naysayer who's, no, I only drink alcohol. There's no way I'm ever going to try this or do this. And then they try it and, oh, this isn't bad. I've had a couple consulting gigs that I've had where I actually go into the place and they are full alcohol. They are importers of alcohol. That's their life.
yeah,
And here I am saying, hey, we're going to taste a range of different products and let's just see if we can find something that works for you.
yeah,
And of course, it's one of those moments where it's, okay, let me just try it. Give me the bottle. And I'm like, hold on. We're not going to do that today. We're going to do this we're going to do the reverse of what you're used to. We're actually going to try the cocktail first. And then if
yeah,
you like afterwards, we can taste it by itself. But we're not going to start there because we don't want to have our brain switch to that negative space where it will go if you tried it on its own, because you've spent your whole life tasting these things and having an instant reaction if you like it or not, or if you're going to buy it or not, right off the bat, based on the taste and the profile of what it was supposed to be like. And I find that so interesting. And I love that you're getting into these national franchises like TGIF. That literally gave me goosebumps just hearing you say that, because that is what is up. And that is what's going on here. And it's so exciting to see, because I was having a conversation with Chris again about how he really looked at the category and said, let's look at what's around us that's similar. And what he was saying is, we are very much like the plant based movement. And at the beginning, that was not called plant based. It was called either vegetarian option or whatever it was. And it didn't really have legs to it. And now we're at that place where we're at plant based, and there's specific brands that have done very well of Impossible and Beyond, and really getting that kind of notoriety for those type of things. But it's really cool how we've really evolved and how it has evolved as a category, and where we are now of seeing these brands getting into those TGIF accounts and saying, okay, this is going to be, that to me is just so incredible, because I know your brand is going to just skyrocket, because all of a sudden you're going to get that kind of like brand recognition of, oh, non-alcoholic, spiritless. I saw that at a TGIF and I got to try it. And it really was something different that worked for me. And I love that you're basically bringing this to people who don't have access to it. I'm so lucky to be in Northern California, where non-alc is very prevalent and something that I can find because I live in a very liberal place. But in the Central America, there's no way that someone has that opportunity typically. I think that's really incredible to see. And I love that we're at that precipice, it seems. And I love that I heard a really interesting, I saw a funny meme on Instagram a couple days ago where it was talking about alcohol as being boomer technology. Like, we don't do that in 2023. Like, we don't use that type of stuff. There's other substances, or we just don't even touch it ourselves. And it's just, and I love that kind of analogy and just funny kind of statement. But I really do feel as if we're in this moment of time. And I think the interesting thing that I am so curious about is, where are we going to find the products and the experiences that resonate with the next generation? We were seeing that they're not going to go to, when I was growing up and I was like starting my drinking career, I loved going to tastings where it was going to be like, okay, there's going to be 100 whiskeys to taste. And I was like, game on. Let's go and get messed up and let's have a good experience. And the next generation has no interest in doing anything of that nature. That is so far beyond something that they'd want to do. So my next thing is like, where are we going to find them in a fun way? That is it experiential? Is it these concerts? Is it just seeing them where they are? Like, I know this might be a tough question, but I just love asking it to people. It's like, where do you see this category going over the next 6 to 12 months? What have you just seen from your experience over the last 4 years of like, where is this headed? Where are you guys spending your time and dollars towards? What's the next step for Spiritless?
Okay, so Charlie, I will say, if you figure out what they want, will you call me? Yeah, I don't even think they know, which is the hard. You know what I mean? I think that's the most complicated thing of all of this. But I think it's twofold. One, actually, and this is an interesting, just Spiritless specific statistic, right? Is
Mhm.
our consumer skews both young, right? Like
Okay.
that Gen Z. But we have a really big 40 plus
Huh.
contingent, you know? And they are buying for different reasons. They are my older consumers, they're sober sometimes, not sober serious. They're looking for a tool or they're going halvesies, they're pulling back. Usually it's a result of either their wives or their doctor saying enough is enough, like we got to get
Yeah.
you healthy. And then you've got this, I think, very purpose driven, conscientious kind of subset of consumers that are on the younger end. And I
Hmm.
do think that meeting them out in the wild is the most important thing.
Yeah.
Where are they? I think they're still looking and craving for opportunities and forums for them to interact that aren't
Hmm.
entirely centered around alcohol. And I don't think that we've solved that entirely yet. And so I think music is a really kind of in festivals broadly are a very kind of obvious logical place to start. But I think I see them, they're craving these interactions, but they don't want to go to a bar. They're entertaining in their homes a little bit, and their friendship and connection for them is in a completely different four walls than it had been
Yeah.
for my generation and yours, which I agree.
Yeah.
I grew up going to college and going to the frat parties and listen, that stuff is still happening too, but
Sure.
it's different. We think about it a lot, and I think music is going to be a place that you find them. I also think that they have a really interesting kind of fine-tuned idea of cause-driven initiatives. They're highly aware. They have a desire to be engaged in a lot of ways and engaged in causes that they care about. And I think that finding any brand can hook their wagon onto a cause. Some nonprofit will always take some dollars, of course. One that in finding ones that are particularly resonant, either with your brand or with your consumer, I also think are going to be, and this isn't necessarily a new idea, but will
Right.
continue to grow as ways to connect with consumer groups and find them where they're engaging, they're learning, they're talking, they're meeting with friends.
Yeah.
But as I said, if you figure it out, Charlie, please call me. Because every day,
Yeah.
they're like these creatures. We're trying to figure out
Yeah.
exactly what to do.
Yeah. And it's so funny too, because it's definitely one of those things about getting older that you really find interesting of, man, you got to keep your finger on the pulse. I feel very lucky that I'm still in the restaurant industry. So I work with them and I find them just so fascinating. Just the way that they operate and they work, and just how they don't take shit from anyone, but they're so true to wanting to still connect and live in this place of positivity. And it's really interesting to me, and I really do enjoy it. It's totally different. And I think that so many times we get so stuck in that they're not like us and that their work ethic isn't the same. And I find them so incredible. And I just love how they stand up so well for themselves and they just don't take shit from people, but at the same time they want to be heard. And I think that they just, the one thing that I feel is really important, and it's something that I'm trying to do more and more, is that I do believe very much they're spending a significant amount of time on their phone and on social media. And I think that's where we need to meet them and
Mhm.
have them understand more about who we are and what we're doing. So at least for me, that's what I'm trying to do, of just making more content and really getting in front of them and seeing what their reaction is to it all. I think that's where I see opportunities, and I love seeing them at music festivals too. And it's just like this moment where I totally agree with you. I think the festivals and experiential is really where they're wanting to be and to engage with people. I find that we really need to peel the onion a little bit more of what really is these experiences that they're looking for. Is it just concerts? Is it different things? And what are those different things? And then again, this really cool opportunity of we no longer are held back by the regulations of alcohol. For so many times, it was like, we'd love to do this, but we're going to have to pull a permit to be able to do this event and get this and do that. None of that's in our way anymore. But so then how can we engage in that way and be able to be involved in these events in a way that first doesn't break the bank, but also is going to get that exposure that we're looking for? And that, Lauren, to go back a little bit, that was one thing that you said that really was an interesting thing for me to hear that I think I forget, is that basically we need to remember that to play in that on-premise area is a very difficult thing to do without huge amounts of capital behind the brand. And I think that's an interesting challenge. And it's one that I find to be really unique, because my head goes to, okay, if that's the case, is there a way for this category to recreate that opportunity and say, all right, we can't be everywhere like the big boys can be, but we also have people like myself who are cheerleaders of Spiritless. How can we make an impact on premise where we are? Is this like an affiliate thing? Is this like, let's use the technology and where we've evolved to as a society of, can we use these kind of micro influencers in a really creative way to make an impact in those different regions? And I think that's the cool thing that I've seen you guys already do with like the new bar down in Southern California with Coachella, with me up here in Northern California. Let's find a way to use these cheerleaders in a way that can help that on premise in a fun way. And I think that's the thing that I'm still trying to really understand more in my own area. It's, okay, how can I be more impactful in the non-alc space in Napa, in Northern California, in a way that's going to be impactful not only to me, but also to the brands that I love that I represent. So I think that's my 2 cents of where I think there's new opportunities within this region. But how do we do that at scale? How do we grow that in a way that's going to be beneficial to Spiritless, to me? And it's my thoughts on it, but I'd love to hear your perspective on it.
No, listen, I couldn't agree more. And I tell people all the time, they're like, how can Lauren, I heard your story. It's so cool. How do I help you? And I'm like,
Yeah.
everywhere you go, you ask for a spiritless drink. Like,
Yeah.
period. That is, and when they say, I'm sorry, what? Give them a look. Be like, are you nuts? Put pressure on these guys when
Right.
they don't have anything for you. So that is the number one way you can help me in little but huge ways every single day. And consumers, and listen, that is why TGI Fridays is here. It's not because we asked nicely. It's because the consumers and the dollars dictated that they wanted it. And so I think that's first and foremost, and any customer can do that. And we're so fortunate to we've got brand loyalists that literally bring their own Kentucky 74 places. They walk in and they're like, listen, I'll buy this for you if you have it, but if you don't, like, this is what I want. And it's not alcoholic, so I know you can do this, and you can still charge me for it if you need to. I get stories like that all the time, and gosh, those make me smile. And listen, I couldn't agree with you more. And yes, online kind of goes without saying. We know that the average, especially Gen Z consumer, they're interacting like 7 to 10 times online with a brand before they decide to make a purchase. Whoa, that's a lot.
Right.
They've seen my face before they drink this stuff. That's crazy to me because I'm of a different age here. But yeah, I think that the more that we can do to make it normal to say, oh, I want cocktail X and can I have that non-alc? And for whoever's behind that bar, go, oh yeah, absolutely. This one's really good. You're gonna love it. And that's giving We're not having to explain, and we're getting there. That's the thing I will say. Although it still feels like there's a long way to go. When we started this business 4 years ago, to me like I had 10 heads. Actually, in Louisville, Kentucky, Charlie, they were like, "This girl's lost her damn mind." They thought we were nuts. We were the girls boiling bourbon in our basement, and they all told us how it was illegal and that this wasn't gonna fly here. And I was like, just watch, hold your
Right.
drink, watch this. And we've done it. And there's still a long way to go, and we're gonna see more and more of it. I think that the adaptability of these products is also something that I just can't say enough wonderful things about, because they're not exactly this a lot of times. And so the spectrum of how they can be used is much wider. For example, Starbucks, super cool, is putting us in a reserve non-alc espresso martini for our Kentucky 74 spiced.
Hell,
Oh yes, hell yes.
wow.
But that just shows like the latitude. Like you're gonna put like
Yeah.
a spiced non-alc whiskey in an espresso martini to the masses
Right.
inside downtown everywhere. It's awesome. But you have to have buyers that are willing to go there, and more and more they are, and they're playing with liquids, and we're getting emails that say, okay, I've literally tasted 150 of these things. Holy moly. There's so much here. And they ask
Yeah.
some more questions and want to understand. Education is still king,
Mhm.
and buying a friend a drink is still king. Sitting at a bar and say, hey, I want you to try this. I'm going to order it for you. I do that all the time. That day at a time.
Yeah, no, that's such an interesting thing to hear. And I always forget that you guys must have just been fighting an uphill battle to the masses being in Kentucky and these people. I think yours and mine is very similar being in Napa Valley. I still have people look at me like I have 10 heads even to this day. And especially being 20 years bartender, it's wait, you're a sober bartender now? What is going on here? This doesn't like it's you almost see it in their head of this non-compute moment where
Mm-hmm.
like their systems just for whatever reason they normally are like, okay, it's Charlie, this is all working out, and then all of a sudden like, wait, stop a second. I don't get what you're telling me now.
Yeah.
And it's listen, I'm still the same person. I still am here. I'm still having a good time. Nothing has changed. I just don't drink anymore. And
Yeah.
it's really, that's all the difference that there is. And it's just, okay, can you still make me a drink? Yeah, I can still make you a drink. And now you have an option. Would you like it with alcohol or without alcohol? It's
Yeah.
very, like, I think that's where it's interesting to meet people. But I think one thing that I love, the TGIF thing is huge. The opportunity to take a place like that. I've had a lot of success at a local coffee roaster called Naysayer. And it's really been fun to work with them because now we're at this stage where I did a couple pop-up events at their place. We stayed open late. We had people come in and just enjoy that experience and have a coffee if they want. But now it's, oh, do you mind if we take a bottle and play with it and try to see if we could find something on the menu to work with it? Yeah, totally do that. But at the same time, it's okay, you charge typically somewhere between $4 to $7 for a drink. Now all of a sudden, you've added Spiritless to it. All of a sudden, you can charge somewhere between $7 to $10 for it. And you're not, you've all of a sudden just raised the bar of what you can charge people and the amount of money and revenue you can make off of a customer. And you've just done that so seamlessly almost.
Mhm.
But it's like this fun thing of it, I'm so excited to see that kind of evolution, as you're saying. I think that's such a fun thing for us to remember is that with the challenges that we're being met with, we also have so many more opportunities than the typical liquor brand would have. And I think that's such a cool moment in time. And I think that's where we're getting, no offense, but I feel like that's almost where we're getting lost. I
Mhm.
feel these liquor brands and distributors look at this and say, okay, great, I have another thing I have to sell people. And it's take a moment, stop what you normally would do, and just taste it and say, okay, great, now I'm going to offer this to X, Y, and Z client. Take a break, take a deep breath, and do some research and say to yourself, where could I really take this now? Where can I really make an impact that's outside of my typical, these are my on premise accounts and I do really well with them because they sell a ton of my products and a ton of whiskey. Okay, great. You might be able to get Spiritless in there. Not saying it's not going to happen, but where are these kind of auxiliary industries that you've just totally written off? And how can you make an impact in those that's going to be impactful for all parties? So, yeah, I just find that so interesting. And I'm so glad you've brought that up of there's money in the banana stand, right? It's like this like saying of look outside of what you're comfortable with and there's could be some great opportunities. So I think that's really interesting that you bring that up.
You know, what we're also seeing, and I love where your head's at, just because my brain works the same way, which is, okay, so now that we've broken it, how do we can do anything? So what do we do? And one of the things that our past life helped us understand how this world worked was just corporate gifting. And
Mm,
in this new wave of wellness, people aren't just sending cases of wine anymore because it's they make a drink and now that's a thing. And we have had some wonderful success partnering with some large corporations as a gifting partner. And it's a great way it's a new spin on the case of wine at the holidays. And it's a great, just interactive
yes.
piece that's a conversation starter that's about wellness. It's about forward thinking and being prepared to be your best in so many ways that we found was particularly resonant. And again, that's something because we're not alc, we can do super seamlessly, harder to do, right? As an alc brand, depending going where and at what scale. There's endless opportunities for the creative problem solver to figure out all the ways to touch the
Yeah.
consumer and to get trial going. But yeah, it's as fun and as hard as you could have ever thought. It is both of those things in equal measure.
Man, that is so true. I always seem to find myself in these categories that are like burgeoning. And it's so funny because regardless of what happens, there's a stigma behind it. And it's something you have to fight through. The effort and the outcome and the reward is just so fulfilling at the same time. It's just such an interesting mix, especially being in this non alc space. And I'm just so glad to see brands like yourself who have this mission that's it's so funny like at this whole time and I love that this is where we're at as industry. It's not really important about the people behind it and their sobriety and their ethos.
Mhm.
It's not That's not the case of what's happening here. What we
Mhm.
need to do is, and what you're doing is you're doing a service really by offering a non-alcoholic product, and then you're making a brand that is, we just talked about all these different demographics of people that we're able to interact with, and then also you're able to offer them things at different stages, right? From the Starbucks to the TGIF to the corporate giving. Like that is an incredible vast array of industries and opportunities that liquor would never be able. Liquor gets into some of them, but not all of them for sure. And
Mhm.
that's really been the eye opener for me. I did an event with Kaiser Permanente last month, and it
Yep.
was like, wait, this could be really fun because this is a conversation that everyone's having. And now we're able to show them the opportunities within this space. But we also had to break a lot of stigma and a lot of things that they're used to. That was a funny thing for me is I showed up to this event, I did it, and there was still people within the Kaiser community, no offense, and I'm not going to name names, but they're like, wait, this has no alcohol? This is like a corporate event. What do you mean? No, there is no alcohol. I know that's usually what you're used to, or maybe it would have happened in the past, but this is where we're at. And also, if I'm correct, you also want people to have 2 drinks a week now, not 2 drinks a day. Things are changing in the health movement and everything else. And it's such an interesting moment in time. And I'm so glad to hear a brand like yourself seeing the array of opportunities. And
Yes.
at the same time, I know that must be scary as shit as well to be like, okay, wow, there's this. We've got to put our head around this and that and that and that. I'm tickled to be talking to someone who can see all these different opportunities, but also understand with it, there's challenges and also great fun that comes along with it.
We're trying. I think it's focus is important. And as an entrepreneur, without a doubt, you take your eye off the ball for 1 second and
Yeah.
it's running out of bounds. And although we've got our hands in a variety of different things, we're doing our best to keep an eye on them. But at the end of the day, like you're You're making as much hay as you can while the sun shines. And when you get these opportunities that come in, you have to say yes and figure them out. And
Mhm.
we have a really capable, incredible team. I can't really share enough just respect and love that I have for my business partners. This is our second venture together. At some point, you really know everybody's strengths and weaknesses, and we still signed up to do it again. And we're figuring it out one day at a time and making the best of these opportunities as they present themselves to us and trying to make new opportunities too. And the challenge is to a certain extent, right? Like threading that needle as it gets super windy to be able to say, okay, this is the strategy here. But listen, it's harrowing and it's fun, but it's still not ever lost on me, Charlie. Just like you said, walking in and seeing it somewhere or having somebody have a drink that they didn't know was non-alc that they really enjoyed, that it blew their mind. It makes my days. Absolutely makes my days. So
I
it's
bet.
true. Yeah.
That's so cool. And I also love one thing that you brought up that I would love to go back to too is just that rebellious nature that I think we can have in this moment of, hey, you don't have anything non-alcoholic? Great. I'm going to bring in my own bottle. Can you make me something now? There's just something so exciting about that. And I think it's something that I find myself not, yeah, sometimes I struggle with it and sometimes it's better than ever. And sometimes I get caught in my own ego or just being out and wanting not to be in the spotlight. But it's saying that I'm someone who doesn't drink and I'm going to not be that person who's like putting in your face, but at the same time, I'm not going to take your club soda as what you have for me. Like it blows my mind. And I went to I went to a Modest Mouse concert here in town last month, and I literally showed up with a backpack full of non-alcoholic beverages. And I will never forget the security person's face when she saw it. She was like, what is this? And I'm
Yeah.
like, this is not alc. And she's like, you can't bring this in. I'm like, no, I can bring this in. And I know you have nothing for me here. So I'm going to bring it in and I don't drink and you have nothing for me. And she was like, okay. She just like, at that moment, she's like, I'm not fighting this guy. This isn't
Attaboy,
alcohol.
Charlie.
And it was like, and at the same time, I need to actually have that conversation with the person who threw the event because that's the kind of shit where I hope it brings change because I am so tired of having to bring this 25-pound sack of non-alcoholic beverages into an event because I know they're not going to have it. But at the
Yeah.
same time, it's fuck your club soda. I do not want sparkling water. It drives me insane when that's the only option that people give me. And I know we can do better. And I love that kind of stick it to the man. Hey, here's what I've got.
Yeah.
You don't have it? Great. I have a bottle for you to use right here. And it's
Yeah.
like this moment in time of let's stick it to the man and make people understand it more and more. And that's why I'm really doing this podcast is I really hope I can speak to more and more people who are restaurant owners, who are bar owners, who are in the entertainment space and say, guys, we see that you're down a huge percentage because of alcohol's down. It doesn't have to be that way. You are deciding that you're dead without looking at new opportunities and saying to yourself, this is the new category. This is going to make up for lost revenue. And by not having it on your menu, you are hurting no one but yourself. You are cutting yourself at the knees before it even begins because you don't have options. So I'm really looking forward to like just seeing this burgeoning opportunity. And it's so funny that you said that. I've only been in this for a year now and I've already seen it grow. And I can just imagine from being 4 years ago, like that had to be a really hard slug of the last 3 years leading up to this moment. But it's so great to also see the growth of your guys' company, to be at Coachella and BottleRock, these larger festivals. It's something else. So I just can't thank you so much for your time. And I guess the only thing I'd ask is, was there anything that we didn't cover or anything you want to make sure to get across to people?
Oh my goodness. Thank you. so
Yeah.
much for having me. Sometimes in these podcasts, people often ask about how we make spirit products.
Mm,
I don't know if that's at all interesting to your listeners, but that's the
I
only thing
usually just, I
about it
sorry to
often.
interrupt you. I usually don't say anything about it because I know a lot of people want it to be proprietary. But if you're willing to give some spill the beans, I'd love to hear it.
I think just to reiterate again that spiritless products, when you roll over a bottle of spiritless, all non-alc spirits have ingredient lists on the back. And I would challenge you that every non-alc except a spiritless non-alc, their first ingredient is water.
Mhm.
And in spiritless, our first ingredient is our own distillate. And so we do have a proprietary distillation process. And essentially, what we do is we take the barrel and put it into the still. We do a really intense thermal extraction. And then we take off just the ethyls and the esters and make this incredible concentrate. And that that process and that liquid that we get is what allows spiritless products to really, I believe, stand head and shoulders above the rest. And that's in flavor potency, it's in authenticity. And we're really lucky to be able to tell this story. But it literally started in my basement boiling bourbon with all the good old boys around town going, "You're gonna kill your kids. You can't do this shit in your basement." And I was like, "No, I think it's gonna be okay. Just
Yeah.
give me a minute. Let me keep tinkering. I'll come back. But can I ask you like 3 questions about how this works?" And they were like, "Lady, get out of my warehouse." They thought we lost their mind. But
That is
here we are.
so cool.
Yeah, here we are. So we're so fortunate and we're excited to be on these journeys and doing the best we can to meet the consumer where they are. And it's in a myriad of places, but I your story about bringing in a backpack full of non-alc into an event doesn't surprise me one bit. I hear that story all the time. And I also think people that are taking a break for the first time, whether they
Mhm.
wouldn't be like sober serious, but let's say they started a new medication and their doctor said, "I need you 6 weeks alcohol free." And they're like, "Okay, sure." The eye-opening effect of when you fully step out of it for a while, it is like a smack in the face, especially when you start looking at
Yeah.
corporate events and things like that. We were at dinner actually with a boomer couple, if we're going to stay focused on our generational divides here. And they were doing a sober month and they were at a corporate event for 3 days. And they were like, "It was actually shockingly maddening. You cannot drink more freaking water. Like you just can't. And you're just socializing hour after hour all day long." And they had nothing there. Nothing
Yeah.
bougie. That's easy. They're like happy to pay. And your story, their story, there's a million of them. And that's why I just have nothing but confidence that it's all working and it's going to keep working because there's just so many people that have a need and that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So we're the luckiest girls. That's the headline here. We are the luckiest girls.
You sure are. And I just got to give you kudos. I think, as you said, especially in this non alc category, you have a moment where literally 100% of the product, if 99%, is water. So
Yeah.
if your water isn't coming from something that has flavor and essence of what you're trying to basically mimic its counterpart, what are you doing here? And I think that is the amazing thing about your product. Open that cork and you smell it. And it's that a beautiful agave. You can definitely see it's like almost like a reposado where you're just like, okay, I'm smelling it. I smell that barrel. I get that beautiful vanilla. It's just so exciting. So kudos to you. You guys have done a wonderful job. I have to thank you guys for all of your support you've given me with BottleRock and everything else. It's been
Thank
so much fun. I'm so excited to see what happens over the next 6 to 12 months with us and the category. I can't thank you enough for your time. It was just so refreshing to hear a perspective from someone who's totally in it and is not going anywhere and is excited from the challenges and looks at it and says, we're just going to keep going here. And yeah, I just look forward to it. And I hope that'll be more fun conversations to have over the next years or so.
Be such a treat. I can't wait to do this again. And we could both try to figure out where all the Gen Zs are hanging out.
Exactly.
And
Awesome.
yeah, let's just keep talking. And thank you for having me and taking so much time out of your day. It's
Yeah,
such a
it was a treat. Thank you so much. Have a lovely day and we'll talk soon. Take
awesome.
care now.
Thanks. Jen. All right.